We are back with another episode of the After the Timeout podcast. We have a great guest today, Kate Vlahakis, head women's coach at Manhattanville University. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I want to just thank you guys so much for reaching out and excited to chat with you.
Every episode, we start with the opening tip. We feel like it's just a good introduction to get to know you, where you've gone,
Mhm.
your journey. So, if you could tell us a little about how you got to where you are, and then
Mhm.
definitely, for our listeners, about your excellent program and some of the things you guys are doing.
Yeah. I don't know that I had a normal coaching path. I always say, I have a little bit of a coaching tree now. I've got some assistants out there and they have a little bit of a more normal path. But yeah, I have kind of a cool story for myself. Graduated from St. Lawrence. I just turned 40 last year, so I'm aging myself here, but played at a pretty high level there, and then moved to Boston. Went into did my degree in psychology. I wanted to go into the mental health field. So I, rip up from upstate New York because who wants to be in anywhere but a city after you've been there for 4 years? So, moved to Boston and got a great job, and there was this part-time assistant job at a small all women's college in downtown Boston that was open. And I said, like, I think I could be this could be like a side gig, something that I could do for fun. So I applied for the job. I had just turned 23 years old, and I went down to meet a kid that would play at BU. And I was like, oh, this is never going to work out. They're going to go with this BU kid. Like, no one cares about Division 3. So, anyways, I get the job. Team wasn't very good the first year I was there, but I finished the season and I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm gonna quit my full time job. And I just heard like crickets for like probably 2 straight minutes. I said, are you there? And he said, okay. I said, I'm gonna be a head women's basketball coach, and I'll never forget this day. He said to me, Kate, that's gonna be like I think you can do it, but it's gonna be like cutting down an oak tree with a butter knife. And I said, okay. So, my journey, I think really, I finished that first year of coaching and I loved the girls and I loved, I had no idea drawing up a baseline out of bounds play to putting in an offense to, any of the things that X's and O wise, I wasn't there yet, but I had a piece of me, I think I could evoke things out of young women. And that was kind of my strength. I stayed at that institution at Simmons for 3 years, helped build it into a playoff team. We were, 17-8. I think when I left, I went over to Framingham State. My boss there, Trish O'Brien, I've been at Colby, MIT. I call her like the first generation of the Division 3 women's coaches. Her best friend was Judy at Babson. So, all these old crony women that are, kind of in it. And I wanted to work for a female. That was a really big thing for me. So I left and I was going to go try to build another program with her. And she said, Kate, if you stay with me, I'll get you a head coaching job. I was never a GA. I never did the full-time assistant. I had, I think, 6 jobs living in Boston, trying to make like $2,000 to live. So I ended at Framingham and went up for a bunch of jobs, within a bunch of years. And, I landed at Manhattanville, the former AD here. I sat in his office. I just turned 27 years old and the team was not in good shape. So there's no way they're giving this program to anybody that's established. He looked at me in the interview and the only question he asked me in the beginning, he says, so do you like UConn? And I was like, what? I was like, I don't. And he looked at me, he said, so you don't like Gino? I said, well, I respect Gino, but I'm a Pat Summitt fan, like die hard through and through. And he goes, you might have just shot yourself in the foot or got yourself a job. So I said, that was kind of my journey. Landed here at Manhattanville and, 13 years in later, been here and, opportunity to do other things. But, this is where I've been. I'm a mom before anything. And I'll talk about that a little bit later with you guys. But that's my journey. Manhattanville was under 500, 8 players when I got here, burning down in every aspect. And I came in, and I think the first thing that I knew that I needed to do was, um, fix things with the girls. And so came in and kind of just, really went bottom barrel, cleaned house, just got into them. We were in that point, we were in the MAC Freedom Conference. So the DeSales was, top 20 in the country. And, we were in a real cutthroat FDU forum, won a national championship my second year in. So it was not an easy situation, I think, to come into as a young coach. First recruiting class, year 4, got regionally ranked 3rd in the region, started to kind of do something and make a move. And, ever since then, I've been, I'd like to think one of the better teams in the region and 1 point national votes. So over time, it kind of turned what it into what it has been. But the beginning was, I always tell people it was not easy. No one cared about women's basketball at Manhattanville when I got here. One of my biggest things was making sure that we were cared about and that we were a nationally talked about program and a regionally talked about program. And so little by little, kind of ceiling by ceiling, we kind of pushed it up a little bit, in top 25 wins and beating NESCAC teams. And there's been some amazing moments, also some heartbreak all through it. But grass is never greener. And so I'm a big believer in being where your feet are. It's just my personal philosophy. So Manhattanville is where I am. And I love doing what I've been doing and excited about, kind of next year.
First of all, I think I'm going into my 10th year as a head coach, and I think my butter knife is dull and broken.
I'm gonna steal that one. That's a standard quote. That's a
good one. Yeah.
All right. So I want to tweak this a little bit based on some things you said. So, you're building a program, you kind of just talked about it before those first 5 seasons, from the outside, the record doesn't look great, but now it's been 6 winning seasons in a row. I kind of want to go into those first 5 seasons though, and talk about you personally, right? So your dad says, you're going to cut down the tree with the butter knife, but does that imposter syndrome set in a little bit? We've talked to a lot of coaches about this. Like, do you ever question, like, am I doing this the right way? Am I building this the right way? Because a lot of times, as you know, in this business, it's results. So kind of take us into maybe your personal journey in that building process as that knife got a little duller.
So I think, for me, when you're 27 and all you want to do is be a head coach, you'll go to the moon, right? So I kind of was like, I can do this. And anyone that kind of knows me knows that's my personality. The first 3 seasons under 500. First season, we went 18-8. Season after that, we kind of dropped again. Then it's been constant upward, right? So it's been, the beginning was tough. At times, I'll be honest, I would get beat by 30 and come in here and shut my office door and not sure that I'm going to make it out of here the next day. And I think there's moments as a coach where you are your own worst enemy. You are the biggest critic in the room, because I always say this, like, you're only judged on those 25 games a year. People are going to look up that schedule and say, Coach Kate, how'd you guys do? Or, this year we lost 5 seniors last year. We can talk about it later, but what happened? It's the first thing that coaches are judged on. And you'll never know what's going on within a program, right? You'll never know injury and youth and graduation and a kid left the program for whatever reason. There's so much that goes into it. So you have to have a really, really good circle of people around you during those beginning years. I was carpentering it. I was building. I said, if I can build, then I can do anything, if you can really build at this level too. So the beginning was, there were some dark days, I'll be honest with you. And I think you question yourself as a young coach, am I cut out for this? And you're in a profession that's so cutthroat now. So, I don't have this exorbitant resume. I wasn't this exorbitant player. I think the AD saw something in me, and my personality is kind of what gets me where I am, kind of every day. And I think that, you're constantly learning. But I had a really good, my first graduate assistant was great. She played at Geneseo. She really helped me build the program. And little by little, I just had the right people in my corner. And you have to, I think, first tell yourself that you're not just being judged on those 25 things. You're not judging yourself on those things. So maybe somebody else is, but your players aren't, and the people that really know you aren't. So I think that you get lost in that success issue all the time because it's society. It's all that we're judged on. It's everywhere. And if you don't win, well, why didn't you win? And now it's like, if I lose a game, it's like the whole world came down. Because when you finally end up winning for so long, so you're never out of it. I don't think you're ever out of the cycle of the beginning. I think those beginning feelings are forever. They just change, right? I think that expectation just changes. But I also kind of loved it. If you want my honesty, like, there was a part of me that was like, I don't know what I'm allowed to say. And it's like, screw everybody. Like, I'm going to do this in Manhattanville. Like, when we beat Wesleyan a few years ago, I said, here we go. Like, come get me. So, there is a chip to me that anybody that knows me as a coach. I'm very fiery. I'm a chest bump my kids. I'm a yeller. I'm a heel stomper. But I love the underdog story a little bit, and it's kind of been my whole life. So, I sort of love the beginning because that's the part that kind of mattered the most. Like, those girls, those first 4-year group, man, those girls mattered so much, and they come back and see me, and it's part of it. It's a tradition, and it's a family. So as much as I, slam my door and I think my my computer thing is still broken from 2013 where I ripped it out of the desk. So it still doesn't work, but part of me loved it. So long-winded answer to that, but I hope that, yeah.
So I'm gonna follow with that a little bit. It
Yeah.
actually kind of ties right in. John and I were just talking about this. Saw Buzz Williams quote about same thing. We're talking about the success, right? Like you
Yeah.
get to the middle of the conference and then you take a step, and everybody's like, "What happened?" But so, and you said you've had coaches, your coaching tree go on to other places. Kind of what
Yeah.
advice have you given them about doing their homework and kind of figuring out from the athletic administration point of what their mindset is on that, right? Because you could walk in and okay, you have 2 or 3 good years and then something's going to change or you're on the hot seat, or finding out they're going to give me time to do this the right way.
I think that 2025 is harder than 2012. I think it's harder for younger coaches. I have a couple in great programs right now that are assistants that work for me here. One's in the NESCAC, one's down in Texas at a Division II. And I always say, like, you've got to be supported. You've got to also be able. What I love about Manhattanville is, I can coach kind of my way. Like, I can get in the locker room and heel stomp a little bit, and I want to be in a place that my person just be you. It's all over my office. It's just be you. So I always tell my younger assistants, don't go to a place that's going to completely manipulate you out of that. And I think coaching, unfortunately, in some ways is catering to that a little bit. And we're adjusting and we're flexing. And I have too, but I always tell, go to an administration that's going to see you for you, and be able to support you through the early stages of whatever it's going to take to build it the right way. I think when you're running people out of jobs right now, you're giving up on a lot of really good coaches, because the way the landscape of athletics is right now, this isn't easy. I think it was easier in 2012. I think this is harder. NLI portals, everything else, Division III to Division I, you name it, and everyone's feeling it. So I always, you want to have authentic connection. My two things in my life are be where your feet are and just be you. Those are my two things. My girls know it, and I want people that work for me to have a personality that isn't muted where they are, and isn't kind of shifted into whatever it needs to be, because that's what it's gonna, it needs to look like this to win. No, you need to look like you to win. And I think part of what makes me at Manhattanville, if you know anybody that knows me, they're like, Kate's Kate. Kate's gonna coach Kate's way. Like Kate, this is her program, and this is what she believes in, and she's not gonna mute her heel stomp or sit on a bench just because it's 2025. Like, I'm gonna be me. So I really want to be in an administration, and my administration is great. I love my girls, don't get me wrong, but you got to be able to be yourself. And I think a lot of coaches right now are struggling with that identity piece and like losing themselves a little bit in this.
So, Coach, you're doing a great job of leading us into the next day. We're flowing good here, but we're doing
We're crushing it.
yeah, we're doing great. Business of college athletics. You have
Yeah.
your MBA. Obviously, everything trickles down, right? I'm at D3. God's in high school. It's starting to trickle down there. Just kind of give us your thoughts on the NIL, like kind of what's going on in college basketball right now. I just saw today, I think there's almost 1,200 kids in the portal.
Yeah.
I think that's just D1, D2 kids. That's not even the D3 kids. And I'm sure you're like us, we check that thing every day because you have to, right? And figure out what's going on, and hopefully, none of your kids are in there and you're trying to figure it out, right? Like, so just kind of give us your thoughts, because you have a lot of expertise in it, and you probably look at it a lot and you teach classes about it and stuff like that.
It's the current climate and the portal and NLI and the coaches mixed into that. It's exacerbated a culture that I don't love all the time. Like, if you want my honesty. And yeah, great. I got a kid coming next week from a Division II. Great for me. The portal works out in your benefit sometimes. But I also, as a parent, and that'll be, like I said, I'll chat about my son a little bit later because he's a big part of my just philosophy as a coach. It teaches you to run now, right? And I think there's like a little bit of well, this is hard, so I'm gonna go to the next thing, or this is too hard, or I don't like this, so I'm gonna do the next thing. And I think that there's process to basketball. I had a player this year, for 2 years, probably should have been playing minutes for me. I'll be honest, the kid was good enough to play. We had 5 really good seniors last year, and she just didn't see the time. And she kind of stuck with me. And that was a kid that could have popped in a portal, gone to another school and said, I'm going to go get what I want. But there's a process to basketball. And I think part of that is being lost with the portal. I couldn't even imagine at the higher levels, in terms of, it's free agency, and you're losing out on. If you're not able to adapt to the recruiting in the portal, you're not going to win. So I think that puts an exorbitant amount of pressure on a higher level coach. The NLI stuff, I think I just got a text from one of my assistants today about a kid like going to Iowa for amount of money from like a mid major, and I'm like, holy smokes! Like, so it has turned sport into just no reality, like no life reality. And I think I coach for that. So, I've never wanted to make the jump to Division 1. That's been kind of something that I've never wanted to do and had opportunities to do that. And part of this level that I love so much is the authenticity to it. And I think that's even being lost now at this level. So, you're teaching kids to, hey, this isn't a good fit. You got 4 schools in 4 years, or, whatever it is. I think there's process to sport. We've all had players that, you don't, it's, I think Mark Few said it. I listened to a thing on him a while back, and his big thing is bamboo at Gonzaga, right? And he has bamboo all over the place. And I couldn't understand why. So I look it up one day. I'm Googling bamboo at Gonzaga. It's like the weirdest Google search. And he says it's something that you don't see really grow until 4 years later. So it's like you're doing all this work with these kids, but yet you're not seeing sometimes the fruition of it because they're not waiting long enough with you. So I think that some of that has been lost, in this process. And I don't know if the pendulum is going to swing back, but it helps us in some ways too. Don't get me wrong. Kids look at Haley Van Lith. Did she finally find the right fit? That's a big buzz thing right now. And, and I think some places aren't the right fit at the beginning, and it gives them that opportunity. But I think it's been exasperated in a way that society has just rolled it into a little bit of a monster.
So I wanted to follow then and talk about maybe the trickle down effect, right? Because, there's just no way. To me, there's just no way all those 1,200 kids are going to find a place to play, right? So now we're bumping everything down. Now maybe they're going D2, right? And a kid that's borderline, maybe back of the roster D2 and can develop, maybe he's going D3. And then it kind of trickles down to where you're not a high level high school kid, right? It's hard for you because there's more spots being taken. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what is your kind of opinion on the trickle down effect of all this and how I think it could end up have a good impact for some, but a negative impact on some kids who maybe could have an opportunity that they don't.
I think high school kids are just going to get shoved back. I think it's going to create you're out looking, the first thing a kid asks you when they come in your office now is, so how many spots are you taking? How many girls do you have on your roster? And that's something that's a bit of a buzz. The roster sizes are so big on some teams, and I've done it before too, enrollment and things like that. So I think that trickle down effect is going to hurt the youth of sport. I think, if we have kids and we see this progression in them, if the portal continues this way, where are kids going to play? I think it also waters down like the talent levels, you're trying to, now differentiate between certain things and what level certain kids are going to be at. And I think that it makes it harder for, kids to be successful, to see themselves in the right division. So, I've only coached college. I've never coached high school. I've never coached anything but Division 3. So, I stand in that, but you're at a high school game and you've only, you don't have that many spots left. And then, I'm trying to get this Division 2 transfer. So I'm going to pass on this high school kid because I think I'm going to get her for 2 years. So it's going to, I think, just crutch sport at a younger level. And I mean, at some point, what are we doing? I think that's a question I've started to kind of ask myself sometimes, like, are we waiting for the portal every year? Like, and I think, I'll be honest, my 2 seasons in the back-to-back championships, we had a Division 2 transfer that really changed us. She was a big reason why we were that good for a couple of years. So I do see the benefit, but I think it hurts the youth sport. And then it also makes youth sport a little crazier. So now kids are really trying to be all the things and try to go to the highest level and pouring money into AAU and everything else. So I think you're gonna see it smush at some point.
All right, I could go a lot of different ways with that, but I'm gonna because we could spend an hour on that topic.
I know, right? It's like the hot topic.
But it's something we really, really find valuable, and I'll be honest with the guests of our show really like this question when we ask it. So why did you, and I know because I kind of heard you in the beginning talk about your age, but why did you choose Manhattanville besides just wanting to be a head coach? What were you looking for? What was some of the reasons you chose that place? Because I feel like we have so many people that listen to our show that might be young assistants and are looking for that opportunity, whether it's college or whether it's high school or whether it's whatever, and they want to be that head coach. And I think it's so valuable for a current head coach to say, like, these are the things you should look for. These are the reasons I chose where I chose. Maybe these are the reasons I stay where I'm at.
Great question. Yeah, I think this has been a question I've been asked a lot as of the last 5 years too. Coach, what are you doing? What's cool? You staying, you going? I'm a big believer, like I said, everyone has a fit. And so when I was initially looking at schools to be a head coach, and I was young, I wanted to be in a place where the administration would support my winning, and heard me on the winning. And I think for me, I came here and it was 20 minutes outside of New York City. I wanted to be able to recruit nationally. Our couple of years right before COVID, we were in 10 different states. I wanted to be able to be in a place with a little bit of a different culture, than a NESCAC or something like that, where, I think that was a good fit for my personality. And I landed at Manhattanville. And, to be honest, before that, I was a finalist at two other schools and I didn't get the job. And the ADs kind of called each other and I went down this loop for 3 months. They're like, oh, you got to take a chance on this kid. And nah, no, Kate, we're not giving you a job. But, oh, take a chance on this kid. So I landed at Manhattanville. And, for me, I think when young coaches are looking, it's not going to be a perfect. It's like buying a house. You're going to get 75% of it. You're never going to be, you could get, the best conference in the country and there's still stuff. So I think it has to be a place that fits your personality, and the players fit your personality and the type of recruits that you're getting. I think it's just, as I always say, it's a fit for the school. It's also a fit for you. So anytime you go in for a head coaching job, you make sure it's a fit for you too. And I think that those are things that young assistants or even younger coaches sometimes they're so excited. And I hear you. Now I'm at a different point in my career with some opportunities over the last years that have come up, and it's a fit, right? So I think make sure that you're in a place that you can be you and that you can also be successful in time. It took me 3 years to my first 4-year recruiting class, like that fourth year, we got 18-8. We went to the MAC playoffs for the first time. We were regionally ranked third in the region, which was really high for us. Like, it was the first time. So we had broken some barriers that, and I knew I could do it here with the athletic director that hired me. I knew he would push me into that direction. And you want to work for an administration that's going to allow you to be successful, early on. But I think a really big part of it is you're always sitting in an interview and they're evaluating you, but you're also evaluating them. And that's a big piece that I don't think a lot of coaches think about. And I'll be honest, I've gone up, had job opportunities in the last bunch of years, and it's just not a good fit for me. So I think that's really what it comes down to, is that there's a place that makes you the most successful as well as the administration. But, I think that's my biggest advice that I would give. And why Manhattanville? Why now? Why am I still here? That's a question I get. I think that's an everyday question. Because I'm here, and I love my kids, and I do a lot here. I'm an administrator, and sure, there's been opportunity, but I have a 3-year-old son, and he'll be my whatever other segment you guys got later down the road for me. I'll jump in with him, but my life is here, and sometimes, as we know, as a parent, your decisions become different later on in your career. You make different decisions. And my decision, and anybody knows that sits in my office, is he's my first decision. So, but I love my team. I love where we're headed. I love the institution. I love my life and where I am. And, in terms of just, you're not 27 trying to get an apartment, getting a head coaching job. You've got actual foundation into you. So as I've seen my life develop over time, that's something that has changed a lot. I was chasing wins and chasing championships for a lot of years. And now I'm a mom, and now I'm a little bit more of a stable coach, I think, than, the 2 a.m. chasing wins. So
I think an interesting follow is just, I struggle with this personally because I feel like and I kind of heard Jay Billis talk about this the other day, but there's so many people talking about the player movement and ways we can restrict it or whatever. But then on the flip side, I turn on the TV or I even look at, coaching job boards, or I feel like high school and college coaches are jumping jobs every 5 minutes, right? So I think my internal struggle is, we tell the kids, like, let's be loyal, let's stay at this program, et cetera, et cetera. But then we turn around and you got coaches that are in press conferences saying, I'm staying here. And then 3 days later, they're going somewhere else. So I guess in your experience as someone that's been at a school for a long time, how do we kind of stabilize for coaches it's okay to stay somewhere for 5-10 years?
I think that the stigma around, well, I'm going to go in for 3 years, get the program better and bounce, right? Or whatever it is. And I think there's a stigma attached to that a little bit. I also think coaches always think there's grass is greener. It's not. It's not. And someone that has been in environments where, I've really understood the landscape the last few years, I think believing in your program, and believing what you can do, and that, just because you stay somewhere doesn't crutch you in any sort of way. It just means that that's somewhere that you're happy. I was promoted to an assistant athletic director here. I teach a class. In terms of it's just a community on campus, there's a comfort to that. And not if the right thing came. That's what coaches are doing, and they're making those decisions. I think Division I is crazy. You already know you're taking a job and you're coaching a game. You know what I mean? Like, that mentality I think is hard. And, when you're talking about that kind of money, I think for the Division II and Division III coaches and high school coaches at the lower levels, as long as you're financially able to do what you're able to do in your life, believe in where you are and believe in the people that you have there, and take the time to actually do it the way you want to do it. I think, a lot of people over the years that have reached out to me, it hasn't been about like, it's been about, look at what, like, you built it. It's a true build, like, in every sense of the word. And I think there's happiness in that factor. And for me, I'm someone that doesn't look at as coaching as a wheel of success, that I have to get to the top and I have to be at this place or I have to be at this place. And I'm not lost in that. I'm not lost in that idea. And I think for me, I'm very humbled and appreciative of everything. So I think our lives change as we get older, and we make the decisions to be where we are. But for younger coaches, it's every time you bounce around, it's there's a new wave of stability that's going to have to go into that program. And eventually people are going to ask you why you're leaving so much. They're not going to ask you why you're staying. They're going to ask you why you're leaving. So for me, I think there has to be, from a lot of people, the narrative that you're okay. It doesn't mean that you're not successful if you don't leave. And I think that narrative at this point in 25 is really tough. You see the higher levels kind of pushing the envelope of making that narrative change for the younger coaches. And, for me, I'll be honest, if you see me recruiting, I got my headphones on. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not socializing with you. Everyone knows, like, don't even talk to Kate. She's crazy. Like, she just go, like, it's like a social hour for most of us, right? And you're out there, like, seeing your friends. And I'm very, like, locked into that, like, I'm not caught up in all the outside noise of jobs and recruits and this and that and who's doing this. So for me, I've found a lot of peace through a lot of personal development over the last, like, 5 years of just, what coaching actually means to me and why I am where I am and what's important. So I think that narrative is something that I share with my assistant coaches to make sure that they're doing it the right way.
So let's talk about the balance, right? You mentioned it a couple of times. You're doing a lot of stuff here, right? You're assistant AD, you're teaching classes, you're coaching basketball, recruiting on a big time level. You're obviously a mom. What are some things that again, you talked about difference between 2012 to 2025, right? There's so much going on, so much different stuff going. What are some of the things you do to kind of find that balance and make it all work the best you can, right? Sometimes it doesn't work exactly how you want. You have a game somewhere or whatever, but how are you finding that balance to put all those things together but still kind of keep your sanity and support your family and do all that?
I won't take credit for this, but I teach a class on coaching, and I show a video, and I'm not a football girl. I don't know football. Don't ask me anything. I could care less what's going on. But there's a video, that I showed about a coach that he signed a contract with his family, and so I've, like, signed my own familial contract. And since I became a parent, and I've made that adjustment in my life, like, you're going to leave your office at this time, Kate, and you're going to put your computer away at this time. And I think for me, I was obsessed with coaching basketball up until my son was born, and you couldn't pull me away from a computer screen to save your life. Right. So I think for me, the balance was not there in the beginning. It was a little unhealthy, if we're going to be honest here today. It was unhealthy. It was, you become obsessed with the success of where you're going. And when people started to be like, oh, she just beat a NESCAC team, and oh, she just beat a top 23 in the country team. And I was like, I got to keep going. I got to keep going, And so I think the greatest thing in my life, the balance, has been my son. But for me, like, personally, off the cuff, I'm a runner. I do yoga. I'm a fitness person. I take that time. I go to the gym every morning. I will not be in my office till this time. Do not call me. Do not text me. Setting boundaries with your own staff and players. And as much as you don't think about that as a coach, you're your own therapy sometimes. And we're doing things that make sure that we're okay. I think in 2025, the batteries are running out of us a little bit. And I have a lot of coaching friends. A really good friend of mine last year that all of a sudden just got out in August. Great coach. Just announced it on Twitter. And I said, what? Like, I said, oh my gosh, like, and it's people, and especially women, and I'm on my little pedestal making decisions whether you can be a mom or you can be a coach. And I'm going to do both. but I'm going to do it the way that makes it the most healthy for me and for my family. My girls know, like, after 9 p.m., like, don't reach out to me. So I've set very clear boundaries. And in the beginning, I was, hey, we got to do this. And I'm watching this film on, you're like, you're in throes every second. And I've taken that step back, just mental health for myself and therapy and just about coaching. And I think that's just not talked about. And why? Like, I always ask why. Like, come on, let's talk about this, guys. And so for me, I was obsessed with, building a program and winning in a place that no one ever thought I could. And it became, almost just the only identity I had. And so since then, that's kind of the ugly part lead up, but I've completely changed. And I'm still Coach Kate, like, dotting up on the court. When it's time to be with my family, or, when I'm, my son comes to practice on a Saturday, my girls are like, Coach, please tell me you're bringing Luca because you'll be so much nicer to us. But yeah, I think that the unhealthy of coaching, kind of sign a contract with your family, if my son's 3, but I said, I'm not going to miss Saturday morning basketball at 8 o'clock. We're going to practice a little later, whatever it is. If I can make those adjustments, and I think a lot of coaches, you're going to regret that decision later on in your life. And I've done a lot of listening to Division I coaches that are like, I regret this decision. I should have spent more time with my family. And that one moment of that one championship is gone. So for me, I really took that internally right after COVID. We had gotten some top 25 votes right before COVID, and we were, I think, probably at our peak of, like, good. And I said, Kate, you gotta stop. So that's kind of the long and short of it now, where I'm at. But yeah, a lot of personal work, a lot of mental work. I got the Calm app. Do my therapy. I come to work, but things that help us so that our batteries don't drain for our players, because with the way things are, you're draining your players and you're draining your coaches now. So making sure that everybody's okay.
All right. So Todd, I'm going to ask for the first time, can I do a halftime adjustments question?
Go ahead. It's all you.
This is new, Coach. Usually Todd.
Yeah, I got you.
So my halftime adjustments, because I want to build on something you said. So for a lot of our listeners that know, I have my master's in social work, and I'm also very passionate about mental health. And as you were talking about the coaching aspect of mental health, and just the idea of, coaches having their own therapists and going through those struggles themselves, I guess, what are some things for you trying to balance all of that? And it could be people you go to, or you talked in the beginning about, your circle in those first few years, but I'm sure you still have a very tight circle now. And maybe this is a little bit of a raw, vulnerable question, but just in listening to you, I don't think you'll have a problem answering it. Maybe what are some things that you recommend to coaches that might be struggling, that might be chasing those wins and burned out, or thinking about quitting? What are some of those specific things like that you would recommend to them to really help them maybe stay the course and support themselves?
It's a great halftime adjustment. I love it. I don't know what the other ones are like, but honestly, it's such an important question. I think you have to be so grounded in what you believe in. And I think you have to be so grounded in not letting the critics or whatever, the pressures, sway you. And that's the hardest thing to do in this profession. So for me, I think what I would tell younger coaches that are struggling, or even any coach, and it don't have to be a younger coach, we're all struggling, at some point, is you're at the end of the day. I'm going to use my dad. I'll be a little vulnerable in this. My dad passed in January of this year, right in the middle of our season. So I have a lot of feelings on a lot of things this year. So I was really happy to hop on this with you guys, because I have a little bit of a different perspective. Early in my career, and my dad was kind of my person about basketball. And I think the reason why I'm able to coach the way I am is because I had no pressure on me as a player ever from my parents. And I had no pressure on me as a coach from my dad. He just loved to look up the girls and see what they were doing and whether I won or I lost. So I think the circle that you're in can't be the pressure either. And I think sometimes when you go home, you feel pressure, or when you go with your coaching circle, you might feel pressure. And those people have to know that there can't be pressure from that circle. I remember one day my dad said to me, I lost a game I shouldn't have lost. It was, I don't know, 2017. We went on like an 11-game winning streak that year, broke records. And I said, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm doing this. And I lost the game. He said, Kate, the scoreboard hug you back? And I said, what? He said, does the scoreboard hug you back? And I said, no. He said, so who cares? He said, who hugs you? My players. Flash forward to, we lost, it's also vulnerable. So I'm going off track a little bit here, but I'm going to get to it. Like, we lost to our first. We had lost 2 back-to-back championships in the last couple of years, and our first one we won a semifinal game, and in the gym we sold out in here. And I have I have friends sitting in the stands and family sitting in the stands, and we win the game. And 2 days later, we lost the championship. So you go from high to low, right? And, I'll never forget, like someone said to me, I watched every single one of your girls hug you, no matter whether you won or whether you lost. And there was emotion in that. And so for me, I don't know that I'm at a place in my career where I don't get lost in the scoreboard anymore. Because at the end of the day, when you see a coach win a championship or you see a coach win a big game and they're not in the photo, you want to be in the photo. So when you eventually just make it about your winning and you just make it about that, it also eats at you and it also affects your team. It's not about me, and the biggest thing is for me is that my players can give me a hug. And I think that for me, that's what's been able to ground me, particularly this year, losing my dad and, really thinking about why are we coaching, so I think the mental health piece of it can really take on a pretty significant toll. And you can go from highest emotion to lowest emotion within 48 hours. And that's insane. It's an insane career, but I think your circle has to be not a pressure circle, and you have to have the right people telling you the right things. And you also have to be able to tell yourself the right things and do the healthy things for yourself. So, at one point, I'll just be honest, I got a Spindrift sitting on my desk. I was drinking Diet Cokes every day for like a year in practice. I was like, what the heck are you doing? Like, I'm going down. This year, thus all Spindrifts, only seltzer. Don't bring the Diet Coke into the gym. So just little things, just healthy things. But long and short, I think for me, I have really good people in my corner. I'm a very grounded human being. You can probably tell a little bit just about my personality, hopefully, on this today. But when you get lost in that scoreboard and you get lost in those wins and you get lost in that one Instagram post and you get lost in those things, you are going to spiral out and want to get out of this. Or when you miss your son's play and it melts you, you're going to spiral out of this. And you see a lot of coaches. I've seen so many Division III coaches retire in the last month, and people getting out of coaching. And so stay your course and believe in yourself, but make sure the people that you're, I would say all my assistant coaches, if you have a hard stretch, boy, like that hug at the end matters. Like you think it doesn't, but it matters to them too, because that championship is a fleeting moment. So for me, I would say be in the picture. You want to be in the picture. And now watch a game and see how many players run and hug their coach. It's something I watch at the end of games, and those are things that stick with me. And I don't ever want to get lost in the winning enough to where I've lost that piece of who I am. And it's really hard to do, but the little healthy changes in your life, and being honest about your own. I tell my girls, I'm in therapy. If you need help, go to therapy. Like we're all in this together. So I think that vulnerability piece, and I can't tell you I was really good at this in the beginning. So this is a new wave of Coach Kate the last couple of years.
I'm just going to keep quoting your dad on social media.
Cool.
He's looking down on me today, telling me he was my biggest fan, and he's got the best. My dad was a international airline pilot. He flew 747s for 40 years, never played a sport in his life, but he had given me and has given me the best advice in this career that I've gotten.
Well, those are 2 great quotes.
Yes,
That's really good.
So, all right. So as we move on to the second half of the show, I feel like the first half of the show was so good. The second half of the show, we're really going to dig into defense, and I'm going to brag about you for a second, and then we can move on. But when Todd and I were looking, we really like to do our homework on our guests, and when I was looking at some end of the year NCAA stats, I was looking at different defensive stats for D1, D2, D3, and this school, Manhattanville, kept popping up. It was 46.2 points allowed in a game, which was the best in D1, D2, or D3. The opponent's 3-point percentage was 23%. But then I found something weird. Usually when you find those teams that don't allow a lot of points, they also don't overly create that many turnovers. And I was like, this same school created almost 25 turnovers a game. So I texted Todd and I'm like, we got to get this coach on. I got to pick. You don't see this very often. So what we wanted to discuss with you was just developing that defensive identity. And for you guys defensively, we'll start kind of in the bottom of the foundation and we'll kind of build up more specific. But for you guys defensively, take us through, you guys, your basic elements of your defense and maybe how you just develop that defensive mentality in your kids to just want to be hungry to get stops.
Yeah. I appreciate all that. You probably know more about my team than I do. So, I think a lot of people, are really, I've been defensive minded since I started coaching. And so for me, I think the foundation, I think, comes in the recruiting process a little bit, honestly, and how you kind of verbalize what your identity is, and like kind of that toughness level to you. I grew up, a Pat Summitt fan. So I grew up, idolizing her, and I did a lot of digging into, her, philosophy on rebounding and defense is really, at the end of the day, you will not win a championship without them. And I kind of like, it stuck with me. Like, you really can't win, Kate. So when I took over here, we weren't very good at anything. So I said, this is the thing that we're going to choose to do. And I think it comes with, some basic fundamentals of, understanding, space and pace and where you are, and, kind of the level that you want to play at in terms of those different things. But, for us, I'm a man-to-man team. I will say this on this, I'm not a big zone coach. So we really build in the fundamentals of the man-to-man defense. I'm not much of a pack line. We switch on a lot. We switch 2 through 5. So, I really, implore my kids to, be able to be fit enough and also confident enough to be able to do that. But I think the beginning stages, I'm not going to wizard this to you at all. Like, it's a basic, we have a drill. It's called UVM shell. I took it from UVM men's basketball. So credit to John Becker. But, they play a 4v4v4 constantly, and so we do it every day in practice. We set a defensive goal or something that we're working on, whether it's blitzing or switching or how we're defending the post. So I think that, that's kind of, I don't shy away from the simple with defense. I think that a lot of people try to overcomplicate this, and I don't. But I think it starts in those beginning stages when you first get players here. I'm cutthroat. I don't know if that side has come out of me today, but I will sit you down, and that's where you will stay if you do not want to play defense at Manhattanville. Or you will probably head down the street somewhere. So I usually say that, like, this is who we are. It's who I am. So that identity is grounded in. But I think a lot of the struggle with kids coming out of high school right now, they don't know how to close out. They don't know how to defend drives really well. They don't know how to switch properly and switch high, certain things like that. So we really focus on basic fundamentals of, of a lot of, we do a lot of shell breakdown, just in terms of who we are. We want to play fast, and we want to play like intense. We'll work on, just positioning in terms of, so I want my 5 to be able to guard my point guard. That's not easy at this level. And at Manhattanville, I'm not in the NESCAC. I don't got, 5 girls that are all 6'1" that can do that. So I've really had to work on, I think, the confidence around defense too. I think a lot of girls particularly don't have the confidence to think that they can play defense. So when you're putting them in situations in practice to be able to do that, for me, we scout really well, so I'm going to know exactly what you're going to do. We want kids. We want a lot of traps on the baseline. We want you to put the ball on the floor. We want you to come into traffic. We're going to play you very physically. We're going to turn you over in the full court. Those are our kind of defensive things. What has happened over the 13 years is the voice of, like, Coach Kate in the early stages of getting kids to buy in. And I think there's a conscious buy-in, like a science to it. Once you see success in it, it becomes now a trickle down effect to, like, who they are and what they tell, their teammates or recruits coming in. But I don't overwit. People ask me all the time, like, how are you guys so good at defense? I'm like, it's not wizardry. Like, we just do basic stuff. Play a lot of man down, a lot of 4v3, a lot of 5v4. If you can guard that way, you can guard anybody. I make you get there's always 2 stops involved, or, and I'll just sub kids out. If you guys want my honesty, you can't do it, sub out. And they'll just get mad. And like, I create this, like, I don't know, it's like this intensity of mad in my defensive system of, I'm going to prove her wrong. Go ahead. Like, prove me wrong. So it turns into this kind of mentality, and it all of a sudden caught wind a little bit. And so we've turned into that kind of team, but we want to be able to guard, I kind of want to give them the confidence vocally that they can guard anyone on the court, and the way that we sort of do that. But the secret too, I'm the 6th man. So you got to play me. And when we're on defense, come to a game. I'm like playing defense with them. So I say, like, I think that energy from me, and people have said that over the years, like, not that I'm greatest coach here, but they thrive off of, like, they are locked into that possession with you. I don't think enough coaches, I think Danny Hurley said the other day, not enough coaches are locked into that one possession, or kids are locked into that one possession. So we treat it one at a time, and we play, we kind of look at it from that kind of standpoint. But it's, I'm not a zone coach. I will go zone. I will do it a 1-3-1. A few years ago, we were really bought into a little bit of a 1-3-1. It was our personnel. We kind of would come out and it really messed teams up. The year we actually were getting votes, but it's not my thing. And I think for us, where we struggle offensively, sometimes our defense always keeps us in it, but it's also, I think, the confidence that you give your players. If you don't think that they're good at defense, they're not going to be good at defense. If you kind of pump them and you're like, hey, let's go, I think you have to decide what you're going to be good at. And for me, I always tell my girls, you see I know the national championship was a little spread out this year with Division III, but you see a really good Division III top 10 in the country game. It's like 42-39. Everyone's playing defense. So how do you kind of create that mentality? Kind of starts there.
Okay, so you just brought something up. Now I'm gonna go, and we'll get back to this, your defense. But
Yeah.
right, you just said it, right? You look same thing. I say this all the time in Illinois high school. You watch championship games, right? Like 43-42,
Yeah.
right? So, and I'm a defensive guy. Like that's what I in high school I was good, right? I was a defensive guy. Just kind of always interests me. But I've kind of gone not over to the other side, but learned a lot about offense through knowing defense. So how is what you do, and this will kind of lead into the next question, kind of affected your offense and what you're trying to do to score? Because I truly believe like you get those higher levels, yeah, your defense is going to be good, but it comes down to you have to be able to score and score in different ways to win that game. Because like you said, you're scouting. Everybody knows what you're doing at that point, right? They're sitting over there calling everything out, and they know exactly what you're doing. So how is that your defensive mindset kind of helped your offensive identity as well?
We want more possessions, right? We want 75 possessions a game, right? Whatever it is. We want to turn you over to get those possessions, and I think that's where it comes from first. Is that we want to play in the open court first. That's my first offensive kind of where we want to stand. Obviously, the better teams you play, that's going to be a little bit harder. But we want more possessions. So I think that's turned into, and where we struggle, I'll be honest, a little bit this year. We graduated 5 seniors last year, so we were very young this year. But I was still pretty happy with some of the things that we did. But it's turned into you play with a little bit more pace in some spots. You're able to get downhill a little bit quicker. You're able to do things with a little bit more space and pace and speed. Your players are also a little bit more dynamic. So I think when you have kids doing some dynamic things on defense, they become a little bit more confident in terms of doing other things on offense. And so for us, a kid that that last year was only a downhill kid. This year, she was actually a very decent 3-point shooter for us. And we'd get a fast break. She'd tip a kid, one pass back to her shot. And here we are. And I said, okay, here we go. So I think that confidence kind of, turns into your offense a little bit. I don't have a system on offense. I think people ask that, like, you're playing to your pieces, everybody's playing to their pieces, but I really think it's a mental thing. If you want my honesty, I think it's how kids operate in terms of the open court and speed and where they kind of are in space, because you're able to turn people over, you're able to get more confident, you get some easy buckets. And that's how your offense kind of starts spinning a little bit. And when you watch, like, I think Texas Tech men a few years ago or whatever it was, like, they were turning guys over like crazy in the full court. Like, they weren't even playing offense in the half court. So for me, that's kind of where I started. And I think that my kids have now mentally got to a place where if they're playing well defensively, we're playing well offensively. It's crazy to it just kind of operates in our system, so for a little bit of us, but we want to get more possessions. We want, we try to get between, I say, like, we can get 75 possessions a game, maybe. If we're playing fast enough, and there's some games that we have, that we're getting higher percentage shots too. We're not, I think the basketball's turned into a big 3 game, which it is. But I'm not a big 3-point down. I'm not a one, like, come down one dribble, pull up coach. So I think for us, that defensive piece is played into the system of offense that I like to play a little bit, just in terms of, the way that we score. So, I think that, yeah, I don't know, transcends it a little bit. I think a lot of it, to be honest with you guys, is confidence. I don't think kids have confidence to do either of it. So then they get down there. My girl's like, we're going to turn you over and then we're going to score. And we say it in practice, turn them over, score, like, every single time, put it right back down. Right back down. And so, I think for us, that mentality has also fused into their offense, where they've struggled a little bit at times.
All right. So, you talked about your offense philosophy, and that's kind of similar to what a lot of people are doing, right? Pace,
Yeah.
creating space on offense. So defensively, right? How are you combating that, right? Obviously, teams know what you're going to do. They're adjusting, they're doing different things, so how are you taking away that space from them to make it hard for them to score? And then maybe something within your system that you've seen that maybe gives you a little bit of trouble. You don't have to give away trade secrets and get somebody on
Yeah.
here listening, but within your system, pressuring and trapping and being aggressive,
Yep.
how are you kind of combating those different things?
Yeah, I think the team spread us out a lot. The way that they're systematically playing, they'll try to spread us out a lot, and make us play, that way. We really this year I honestly was a bit of a struggle for us. We took so many charges last year. Probably one of our greatest, like our stat, like we were taking charges everywhere. Like we were just always in help. Like our help defense was above and beyond last year. So I think for us, like we combat some of the spread out and they're pulling their five out. And, I think we're athletic enough to be able to guard you anywhere. So, I think for us, the way that we switch is something that I actually took from, another coach that, the way that you're able to switch will be indicative of what you're able to do sometimes. So if you can't switch on a lot, then you're kind of locked up. So for me, part of my philosophy early on, we couldn't switch on a lot. So when people try to spread us out, we'll try to switch, we'll try to, play you in a little bit more, we'll play you in gaps. Like we're big on gap defense. Like we'll play you in gaps. And that's something that we really, really like to do. We'll switch in weird ways. So like if we'll let a kid go and we'll switch out, if that makes sense, like we'll let her drive, we'll bump, and then we'll dump, like we'll switch out. So we'll kind of switch on you in weird ways. I think that, our struggles, people like to backdoor us now because we play a high pressure defense. We'll play up, we'll deny you the ball at the half court line. And I think this year we struggled a little bit early on with, we got backdoored a little bit too much and people were, kind of curling off the screens a little bit too much, things like that. But we don't want you to be able to pass the ball. So we're gonna high pressure you all the way up. And eventually I think, certain teams kind of make adjustments to that as they go along a little bit. So we'll back off. So I'll give you an example. A team this year, we made an adjustment in the second game. They were really good. The team we played this year was really good too. And we actually let her point guard bring the ball all the way up to the foul line. And we just sat in the paint with her. And instead of like pressuring her and high pressure, she almost wanted us to play our way, and we kind of adjusted in that. I think a lot of defenses too, just like understanding, again, the adjustments that you're making, but it really worked. We held her to, I think, 3 points in the game. She really hurt us in the first game. So it was a little out of our normal defense. And I think they were a little shocked when they saw our point guard sitting under the 3-point line. So I think, again, being able to create a game plan that works, that's your job. But I think my kids are bought into that philosophy, with us, and, we'll make adjustments into that as we go. But our identity, like our actual tenacity, like if you see us in a game, we'll get a steal, we'll clap to the crowd, like, let's go. Like the crowd will get up with us. Like it's part of like who we've become. And so I think that that's just something you have to kind of really dig your heels into and preach. And, I think that that's kind of carried us into sort of where we are. And stats, I didn't even know those stats. I'll tell my team I'm proud of them today a little bit. So.
All right, so I'm going to follow again because we can keep going here.
Yeah, you guys.
I can guess you're kind of peeling off. You talk about peel switching, right? You're peeling off, picking up somebody, peeling off.
Yeah.
But what are your basic teaching points on the switch, right? Like, you talked about the fundamentals of it. What are you telling them to do? Whether it's meeting and then, there's kind of different terminology for it, but I'm always interested in the terminology you use and how you kind of teach it. Cause we do a lot of switching. We do a lot of switching too. But I'm always looking for something, to maybe make it clearer for your team or put it in a way where they can.
I think it depends on who you're playing. So for us, like we'll switch high. So like, are we switching high on this team? I also say we don't want to bump bodies. So don't switch to her. Don't switch to her arm. Switch with your nose to the ball. So nose to the ball is like a big, big keyword for me. I'll say it in games. Like when you're switching body to body. A lot of kids switch body to body. They don't cut off the driving angle. There's no point in switching. So when we switch, like you can switch high and maybe she goes back around. But when we switch like nose to ball, and it's really helped my team understand how to cut off a driving angle. Like if you actually get your nose all the way over to where she's dribbling the basketball, that drive is going to be, you know what I mean? Because she's trying to get you going. That's our key word. They'll switch body to body. So they'll come off, a kid will come off and you're switching to her body. And I said, then she's just beating you to the basket. You'll hear me screaming in a game, like nose to ball, like heel stop. I'm doing it right now. Catch me in October. That's a big thing with us. is really understanding when you're guarding the switch where your body's actually positioned, and again, certain teams, we want to switch you back into what you came from. So we'll kind of release. It's like, we'll almost blitz it. We'll release and kind of, blitz you up. But when we're just, not doing that, that's a big thing that I think is, and I can't take credit for it. My old boss taught me it. She said, Kate, if you get your nose on the ball, I said, yeah. She's like, you're going to cut the driving angle off. I said, you're right. Like, kids don't, they just body and then they let a kid pin them. So for us, it's something that we really, really work on in practice. We do a drill called like cookie jar, and we just kind of work on those kind of concepts of keeping people out of the paint in certain ways, just kind of how we operate. But that's like a little bit of a keyword sort of that we use in terms of the way that we switch. And again, depends on who we're playing. Maybe we're, completely cutting the drive lane you off and switching you into the other, pushing you back in. But, it's my own little thing, and you'll hear me screaming it in games. People on the other side of the bleachers can, what the hell is she saying? She's absolutely out of her mind. So, but they know what I'm talking about. So, now everybody's downhill or threes, right? So how are you guarding a downhill drive and how are you guarding a three? And we want to, we'll run kids off the 3-point line. That's, I think, one of the stats that, you said, like, we'll run you right off the 3-point line. Like, we want you to come into our stuff. We want to kind of, drive you into the gaps. Like, we'll run you off the 3-point line. So, but I think that, just my little word is nose to ball. Like, get your nose on the ball, man. Like, stop guarding her body. Like, slide over, get your body in front of her and take a charge, or put yourself in a position to be able to actually switch, and don't switch so low. A lot of kids like to switch with the drive instead of switch to cutting the drive. Don't switch with the drive.
All right. So this is the question I'm curious about. So my team specifically, we like to force turnovers. That's kind of what we base ourselves on. But I also know that sometimes when you try to do that, occasionally we do give up a layup that we probably shouldn't. So I am very curious how we force 24 turnovers a game, but we only allow 46 points a game in a college basketball game, because I'm going to be honest with you, Coach, that's remarkable. So maybe what are some things you're telling them when they're forcing turnovers, maybe that they're rotating on the backside or whatever they're doing to restrict, also maybe giving up a cheap layup here or there?
Yeah, so we like a lot of the man down, like 4v3 stuff. We do a lot of it. So like how you're rotating kind of in the back, and like who's the second line of help. We work on second line of help a lot. I think the first line of help is easy. It's the second line of help that you get stuck on, right? And things like that. So how we're kind of rotating in the back in the half court. In the full court, if we're pressing, we want like kind of chaos. I hate to say it that way. And kind of, we want our kids to be able to play in different spots. So I think for me, you are giving up some stuff if you're trying to, get some stuff out of it. But the way that we rotate, I think we're in our best years of doing this, like high level communicators in the back. And I think that it's usually not the first rotation, it's the second rotation. I don't know, maybe not with your team, but with my team, we always get burned on the second rotation. So we do a lot of we will break down the second rotation. That is all we will do. We will just go through the second rotation. Here's the help. Here's the help. It's like basic fifth grade stuff. Like, I hate to say, like, it is. Basketball is not a wizardry. I don't think it is. I don't try to make it that way. But my girls are able to communicate that to each other. And I think that's part of it, is there's lack of communication about what they're doing on the court. So, and I think there's a confidence to that. We really do a lot of breakdowns with the helper, because I think that's where we will get beat there sometimes by the way that we play, and kind of, in that kind of sense a little bit more. But, and it's weird this year. I didn't have a very deep bench. So I don't know how sometimes we were doing what we were doing, to be honest. But the years that I've had a little bit of a deeper bench, the way that I sub sometimes to be able to play at a certain pace, in terms of the pressure defense and the way that we want to play. But I think for me, we never get beat on the first step. We get beat on the second step. And so, for us, it's something that the way that we rotate in the back, and we'll do a lot of 4v3 is a big thing that I do. It's like, we'll do 20 minutes of because that's just, and I actually took that from UConn women. I was at an open practice years ago, and I think Gino Oriana was like, where you can't guard anybody like that, in his like Gino way, like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to be able to guard 3 girls, did you know? Like, or 4 girls, did you know? So he was talking to people about how he plays man down so much in his practices. So it's something that we started doing to kind of make people rotate, a little bit differently.
Well, I think it gets that mentality too. You got to scramble, you got to fly around, you have to,
Mhm.
yeah. So I'm guessing we're gonna kind of talk about like how you're assessing your defense, but I'm guessing, John, that that scoring average comes from rebounding too. I would bet your rebounding numbers, defensive rebounding numbers are really good. But she shakes your head.
I don't know about this year. Maybe last year. I was
Well, I mean,
this year.
you
So
know, you have if
yeah,
you're gonna stop them from scoring, you got to get rebounds, right? Like,
yeah.
but so when you're, it could be in game, it could be after a game. You've talked about this a little bit, but like kind of your defensive goals, kind of what are your checkpoints you're looking at? You're like, okay, you going in halftime, and you're like, where are we at with, obviously turnovers you're looking at, but different things. Some of your defensive celebrations, like you've mentioned it a little bit, but what are you really hyping up to kind of get that mindset? And then, like you go into the off season, right? Kind
Mhm.
of how are you assessing it? Like, you said you lost 5 seniors. Well,
Mhm.
okay, do we have to tweak it for this personnel and do something different here? Kind of things like that, and kind of where you look to improve.
Yeah, I mean, this last year we lost 5 seniors into this year, so there was definitely some areas of gap that we didn't have the year before. But yeah, charges for us are big. That then you understand what you're doing. I would say when you can take a charge, then you really understand help. Like you really understand, whether you're in a pack line or whether you're playing gap or whether you're switching, whatever you're doing, you understand that the charge is a big thing. So I celebrate charges big time. Like that's a big stat. My assistants will, stat our charges. But defensive celebrations, like how many times have we turned them over? Sure. But something that we're the rebounding, right? So it's, like what's the efficiency there, and we want everyone to rebound. And this year I think it wasn't our I don't know. I don't think it was our greatest stat this year. We've been better at it in the past, but usually when we're rebounding at a pretty high level, then our defense is at a pretty high level. But yeah, I know. I think for me, loose balls, charges, those are big things. Like when kids are diving out of bounds, and we track all that stuff. So I think when you see us play, and I'll be honest with you, I think, one of our better years right before COVID, the biggest kid we had on our team was 5'9". We were very undersized and we were beating teams just everywhere. And just the way that we played, like we would just rip the ball, like any tie up loose ball rip, like, even jump balls I'll track, because if you could get your hands like on a forced jump ball for that, like, when they're on offense, anything that you can do to prevent it, tips, anything out of bounds, it doesn't have to be a full takeover possession, but I think you have to give your kids the confidence in those areas to know that they're capable of doing it. So when you see my teams play and you see them flying out of bounds or ripping up, that's kind of things that we're tracking, in practice, and things that we're celebrating at halftime. For us, and the rebounding that's just a tough. I'll kick you out the gym. Like I'll be real. Like they do stairs. Like so we do rebound drills. You miss a rebound, hit the stairs. You owe me two. They come back in. It's like a whole thing on my team. They hate it. We'll hurt each other by the end of the end of the drill. And like I said, it's 2025, so maybe coaches aren't like, oh, I'm not putting them on the stairs. Get on the stairs. So well, it's a toughness factor. Like there's our rebounding in practice is, and if I jump in practice, I'm just, like I was like, are you guys serious? Like, come on. So I think I'm a very small human. I'm 5'5", and I like just pack so much energy. And I think my girls like rive off of that a little bit. So our rebounding drills, like they know you give up a rebound, get out, and they'll start kicking each other out, like get out, get out. So like it's this like combative, tenacious, competitive mentality that has carried us into, I think, rebounding and defense unanimously together. But any loose ball tip, to kind of say track your celebrations, but I will pump them on defense. You'll very rarely hear me in a halftime like, great shooting. It's not my area. It is. I'm like, you guys are doing great, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, yo, you're turning this kid over, jump her here. Like we'll really, and it's our identity. It's become who we are. It's just who we are.
All right. So as we get into our last two segments, the first one
Yeah.
we call 30-second timeout. It's your opportunity to discuss whatever you want. I have a feeling I know what you're going to discuss, but it could be about anything you want. The floor is yours. You could turn the tide on Todd and I, whatever you'd like. And as we say to all of our guests, there's no referee in your timeout. We promise very rough 30 seconds. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think my 30 seconds is to all the moms out there. Keep being a mom. This is my platform today to kind of say my little piece on it. And I know there's been some, publicity around it this year, with the Tennessee coach and everything, but I have a 3-year-old son. He's, all of us that are parents out there, you put your feet on the floor every day for, something bigger than, being a mom has been the greatest addition to my coaching philosophy and journey that could have been. But for the moms out there, it's not easy. Dads, don't come at me today, but it is not easy doing what we do. So I've heard a lot in my career, like, how long can you do this, Kate? I said, excuse me? How long can I do this? So, I think for me, I am doing this as a mom. And I think all the moms out there, I want you to feel supported and, no matter what sport you're coaching too, like if you're listening to this and, I think that there's a level of, publicity around it now. And I would just say that my son is, he was shooting baskets before he was fully walking. So I hate that he's kind of good at basketball right now. He's 3. I'm like, oh, like you didn't have to head here, but he's the light of our gym. He's, the light of my life for sure. And he's made me, maybe the stats haven't always shown it in the ways the last 3 years in some areas, but he's made me the best version of me as a coach. But really to the moms out there, to take my 30 seconds, feel supported and feel like that you can balance these hats and that you have support at home and that, you have ambassadors of women out here doing our thing. And, I'm really proud to be able to do that. So that's my 30 seconds.
That's awesome. So your son's getting buckets. Is he playing any D though? Is he going to lock anybody down?
You guys, so it's like, the other day, I'll tell you this quick story. It's crazy. So he's 3 and he's, literally I got a video of him at 9 months old in a little tyke thing. So the other day we're shooting in the yard. Mom, I'm a shooter. I said, yeah, you'll be a shooter, but you're going to play defense. He actually can shoot. It's crazy. My girls are like, coach, he can really shoot. I'm like, but you're going to play defense. He's like, no, I don't think so. And I turned around.
It's awesome.
And said, that's not a slap in the face today. I was like, you got to be a two-way player. And I'm like, what am I saying to a 3-year-old right now? I was like catching myself.
Like, yeah. Mom, I want to get buckets.
Yeah, he's a bucket getter. He is a bucket getter. He might not be playing any defense. Bucket getter.
That's all right. Everybody has their role. We can find a way to get bucket. All right. Last segment here. Quick hitters. Just kind of rapid, random fire questions. Having some fun. First one. Best place to eat in the Bronx.
So we're in Westchester. So I'm going to get you guys on this one. We're going to best place to eat in Westchester.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know the Bronx that well, but Westchester, we're at Candlelight. It's a dive wing place right near our campus. The kids love it. If you ever come to Westchester County, New York City, you guys hit me up, go to Candlelight.
All right. So favorite thing to do outside of basketball in the New York City area?
Walk the Brooklyn Bridge. If you've never done it, do it. If you kind of go to New York City, it's one of my favorite things, or, anything on the rivers. But I think when I first got here, I'd never been on the Brooklyn Bridge and I walked it. So, in New York City, do it. Be a tourist. Do the things that are fun. I actually live in Connecticut, so I don't live in New York. But all these amazing things that are around us. So yeah.
All right. Something you'd like to see in college basketball? Something different, a change, a trend, whatever you'd like to see.
I want to see every school with video playback for every level, and I want it in playoffs at least. That's an area that I don't think at Division III. Probably some Division IIs is pushed enough right now. And I think other levels need those resources. So I want to see video playback, just like Division I has it at all levels. That's something I want to see.
Yeah, we were at Northern this year and we were playing them and we were like talking beforehand. We were like trying to challenge things that we couldn't even challenge just because we wanted to use it. We challenged that. I don't even know. No, they're like, no, you can't. Dang it. We want to challenge something, right? We want to use it.
So Todd and I are both Division III assistants at some point for both of us. So your favorite thing about Division III basketball?
My favorite thing about Division III basketball, that there's an authenticity to it, unlike another level. And I think it's because you don't have money and you're not playing with those pieces. I think Division III allows for the perfect kind of balance. It also allows for a perfect coaching balance. And I will say this, for years thinking about going to a higher level and just, being able to have that kind of balance as a coach. There's an authentic connection at Division III that I think is lost a little bit at a higher level.
Your favorite sports team, or if you have a favorite sports team, maybe favorite sport outside of basketball?
Yeah, this is such a tough question. My favorite sport probably outside of basketball. Gosh, guys, this is the hardest one you've asked me all day. Honestly, I'll just say this. I'm born and raised in New England. I'm a Red Sox fan. I'm a Patriots fan. I'm a Celtics fan, so I'm in the wrong area, but I love a Fenway Park. I'm a big New Englander. I had a Boston accent when I moved here. I'm loud. I drive crazy. So I think probably a baseball game, I'll take it. But I'm a basketball junkie, but I've definitely loved like the women's soccer, women's lacrosse, those things that are up and coming right now too. But yeah, I'll just say I'm a true New England sports fan across the board.
All right. My only problem with Fenway Park when I visited, I'm almost 6'1", and
Okay.
it's a little tight.
It's so tight. It's so tight.
It's a little,
Actually, I'm 5'5", but it's the cathedral of New England.
yeah.
So
I mean, it's amazing. It was just tighter than I thought it was gonna be.
yeah, I love that.
All right. So last one. If you
Yeah.
weren't a basketball coach, you would be what?
I would be probably an athletic director in a prep school. I went to prep school. That would probably be someday when I'm all said and done with this and ready to walk away and retire. That's probably, administration is the direction that I will head. So if I wasn't a coach, I would be in some sort of administration. I'd love to work in like a secondary prep school or even in college, but I'd be in higher ed in admin. I just love higher ed. I love, the population of student athletes and, all the things that you're kind of, your day is so different every day, but I would definitely do that.
Coach, this was one of my favorite episodes in a long time.
Don't give me too much credit here. I babbled my
Just,
way through, you guys.
Well, and I think as we sign off, I think our listeners are going to really enjoy your authenticity and just your realism in your answers. So thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this and keep doing what you're doing. This is great. Thank you from the basketball world.